Hello, friends! Today I will tell you about the cartoon Scooby-Doo. How dare you! A homeless puppy was so hungry that he stole a whole spool of meat for shawarma. Seeing the tailed criminal, a policeman on a bicycle rushed in pursuit. But the emergency worker did not give up. He used a trick and hid on the beach. The puppy, along with the meat, buried itself in the sand to wait for the policeman to leave. On the same beach, a boy named Shaggy was strolling. He had no friends at all, so he had to eat lunch alone. He noticed two piles of sand, drew faces on them, and had a picnic. Hearing that Shaggy was lonely, the little dog came out to him and then shared some meat. At that moment, a policeman noticed him. Shaggy said that this was his puppy, and his name was Scooby-Doo. Realizing that Varishka had not only a first name, but also a patronymic and even a last name, the cop backed down. The law forbade him from punishing dogs with patronymics. After that, Shaggy invited Scooby to live in his room. He showed him his favorite toy, a blue falcon figurine. His partner was the wonder dog Dynamite. Then Shaggy gave Scooba a collar, and he promised that he would never take it off. From that day on, their adventures together began, and their first adventure was a Halloween candy shopping trip. On the way, some overly caring hooligans attacked them and stole their candy. "We're saving your teeth." After some fun, they threw the bag of candy into Mr. Rigby's house. It is dangerous to go here, because according to rumors, a ghost lives here. When the hooligans left, three friends approached Shaggy and Scooby. Fred, Daphne, and Velma. They offered to return the sweets, but Shaggy was against it. He was too afraid. Despite his protests, the friends entered the house and noticed the bag of candies. At that moment, a ghost appeared. Shaggy and Scooby hid in the closet, and the ghost rushed after Daphne. However, Velma noticed that it was not a ghost at all, but an ordinary person tied to the ceiling with a rope. She pointed this out to Fred, who cut the rope. When the friends removed the mask from the ghost, Mr. Rigby was revealed underneath. In his closet, Shaggy and Scooby discovered a secret door leading, no, not to Narnia, but to a room with stolen electronics. The friends called the police, and Rigby was arrested. I would have gotten away with it in time, if not for those annoying. From that moment on, all five began to investigate cases where all sorts of supernatural things were involved. They grew up and decided to give their corporation a new impetus to development. They invited Simon Cowell, who had spent a lot of time on the talent show jury, as an investor. He said right away that Scooby and Shaggy were the weak link and it was better to get rid of them. Then he was ready to secretly invest money in the corporation. Shaggy and Scooby are offended and leave. They go bowling, but then something weird starts happening. The pins and balls come to life, turn into robots and attack them. But the friends manage to escape. However, they do it in a very unusual way. They are captured by a force beam and dragged onto a ship that looks like a falcon. Inside, they are met by the son of the first Blue Falcon, Brian, who has put on his father's superhero costume. Working with him are the Wonder Dog Dynamite and Dee Dee Skies. After meeting the Falcon, Shaggy and Scooby realize that he is an ordinary clown, and Dee Dee does all the work. She gets some help from Dina. Dee Dee fills the boys in on what's going on. It turns out that the robots were sent after them by a villain named Dick Dastardly. When they were on the Blue Falcon's ship, Dick found them and tried to attack them. But Dee Dee is a master at steering the ship and manages to throw the villain off her tail. While she is steering the ship, Brian and Dynamite reveal that Dastardly is looking for 3 Cerberus skulls, and he's already found one. Now the Falcon crew needs to stop him from taking the remaining 2 skulls. Brian and the others offer Shaggy and Scooby to stay with them, and they agree. Meanwhile, Fred, Velma, and Daphne learn about the incident at the bowling alley and go there. It turns out that the robots attacked their friends. There is even one broken robot left, which the boys take for themselves. They go in search of Shaggy and Scooby. After examining the robot, Velma finds a hair there and tests it on her equipment. She found out that the hair had previously belonged to Dick Dastardly himself. After running it through the police database, Velma learned that Dick was searching the planet for some giant skulls. He had also stolen genealogical data on dogs from the World Canine Society. Among them was Scooby-Doo's pedigree. Realizing that the villain was up to something extremely evil, the friends set out to find him. Meanwhile, Dastardly punishes one of his robots for failing. He rips off his head and replaces it with a vacuum cleaner. Dee Dee and Dina try to find the second skull, but they fail. At this point, Blue Falcon is texting fans to get him a tip on the skull. Shaggy and Scooby show up and give Dee Dee an idea on how to organize the search. You and I are geniuses. It works. She discovers the skull of Cerberus in the Gobi Desert. However, Falcon was told to look in Romania, and he forces the others to fly there. Velma restored Scooby-Doo's pedigree and found out that his ancestor was Alexander the Great's dog named Peritas. Meanwhile, Falcon led his team to Romania, to an abandoned amusement park. When they arrived, Dastardly showed up and said that he had already run off to the Gobi Desert and smashed the second skull. Now he had arrived to destroy the heroes. Dynamite and Dee Dee bravely entered the battle with the enemy robots, but Blue Falcon cowardly hid. Scooby and Shaggy also escaped, but they still managed to fight the Ironheads. Then Dastardly burst in and tried to grab Scooby. He sent Shaggy into the Ferris wheel cabin, where Falcon was hiding. Together they tried to resist the robots, but only made the situation worse. Dee Dee saved everyone. When Scooby escaped from the villain, she grabbed the whole company with a power beam and dragged them inside the plane. Here Scooby tells that Dastardly thinks he is some kind of key. The resourceful Dee Dee offers to find out what kind of key it is, but the stupid Falcon insists that first they should give Scooby a costume. At this moment, Dastardly learns that Scooby's friends are trying to find him. He asks the robot in Fred's van to reset their location. When Scooby was making his superhero costume, his collar got in the way. With Shaggy's permission, he removed the gift to complete the costume. Now Scooby was on the Falcon's team, and Shaggy was left out. Fred, Velma, and Daphne guessed that their friends were taken by the Blue Falcon. They were happy, but then the police stopped them. The officers found a super beautiful woman, and Fred fell for her immediately. But then she took off her mask, and underneath it was Dick Dastardly. He ordered his robots to capture the entire team. A black cat ran between Shaggy and Scooby. Or maybe it was the Blue Falcon. They started to quarrel. Shaggy was jealous of Scooby's new friends, and Scooby didn't understand why Shaggy was so unhappy. Once in a cell on the Dastardly ship, Velma tried to pick the lock, but she couldn't. Then Daphne noticed a robot with a vacuum cleaner instead of a head and helped him clean the insides of the dust. He was so grateful to her that he arranged for Daphne and the others to escape. Once in the main hall, they saw where the third skull was and decided to tell Scooby and Shaggy about it. Velma hacked the vacuum tube radio and connected to the dynamite. Through it, she transmitted information about the location of Dee Dee's third skull. After that, Fred found many interconnected pictures in the room. One of them depicted a castle, and Fred took this piece of paper for himself. Velma also studied the pictures and realized that Alexander the Great hid his treasures in the afterlife. He sealed them with a special lock that only the descendants of Alexander and parrots can open. Dastardly burst into the room where the friends were and told them the story of his dog Matley. Together, they opened the gates to the afterlife full of treasures. Then Dick sent Matley there, and the dog was able to pass through the portal. But he could not return. To enter our world, you need a key that is hidden in the Scooby genes. After all, only it can unlock the lock of Alexander the Great. Having told this story, Dastardly ordered Daphne and Velma to be sent to a cell, and he kept Fred for himself. Dick had his own plans for him. Dee Dee brought the team to the depths of the mountain, where there was an ecosystem with dinosaurs and exotic plants. Blue Falcon and the team went to look for the skull, and Scooby went with them. But Shaggy stayed behind. He thought Scooby would be with him, but he abandoned his friend. Blue Falcon and the others explored the underground world and found a native named Captain Savage. He knew where the third skull was, but to get the artifact, the friends would have to fight the savage. The captain made the falcon very quickly. Then he dealt with Scooby and then Dee Dee entered the picture. At this point, Shaggy was sad and alone. But then Fred showed up in his van, and Shaggy told him where Scooby and the Falcon crew had gone. They went to save their friends together and showed up just as Dee Dee was fighting Wildman. It turned out that Fred's face was a mask under which Dick Dastardly was hiding. He grabbed Scooby and took the skull, then flew off to Athens to open a portal to the afterlife. Before leaving, he dropped the real Fred, Velma, and Daphne. When the Falcon's crew returned to their ship, they found it in a complete state of destruction. Dee Dee analyzed the damage and found out that the auxiliary engines were still working. They could be used to create a flying machine to get out of the underground cave. That's what the friends do. But before that, Falcon's team and Fred's team start to quarrel. Shaggy reconciles them with an inspiring speech about friendship. When they arrive in Athens, Dastardly performs a ritual to open a portal to the afterlife. A three-headed Cerberus emerges from there, and Dick breaks through. Here he finds Muttley. Meanwhile, Falcon's crew begins to fight Cerberus, and Brian hides again. The ship's robot vacuum cleaner, Dastardly, sees that Daphne is in danger and leads his robot friends into battle against Cerberus. At this point, Brian, after talking to Dina, realizes that he can do something heroic. He gathers up his courage and enters into battle with Cerberus. Together they manage to drive the monster into the afterlife. All that's left is to lock the castle. And only the descendant of parrots and his best friend can do that. In this case, one of them must remain in the afterlife. Shaggy decides to go there, and he leaves Scooby in the world of the living. They lock the castle, but then Shaggy returns. Dastardly and Muttley are tied up. Shaggy breaks off the villain's mask, and Simon Cowell is revealed to be underneath. However, Velma realizes that this is pointless and rips off the mask again. The real Dick Dastardly is hiding underneath. He was counting on the heroes not thinking of tearing off the second mask. Then Cowell would be blamed for everything. Falcon takes Dastardly and his dog away, and Fred and his friends throw a party. Falcon and his team arrive, and they give Mystery, Inc., a brand new car to replace the destroyed van. After that, Velma receives a call from worried residents of the coast, where a ghost ship appears. She and her friends set off to investigate the case. They catch the captain of the ghost ship and make it into the newspapers. They then commit other heroic deeds, and Dastardly and Muttley escape from prison by digging a tunnel.